Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Today we are decoding Trump tweets of March 29th, and it looks like we have a few from the 30th as well. Thomas, would you like to get started right away? Do you have anything to say to folks out here?
I just want to say that we're going to need a lot more doctors because of the far left's Trump derangement syndrome has gone so insane that these people are going to have to be hospitalized. Poor Adam Schiff. Poor Pelosi. Pelosi can't open her mouth without lying. So what we have here, this is what Trump predicted. So much winning that we have to tell him, can you calm down for just a minute with the winning? Before you go to war with Mexico and before you win the battle on the southern border, can you at least let us take a breath? That's what's going on, and people are in that kind of a stasis at this moment because they know that the lies that are coming out from the mainstream media and screams for further investigations are absolutely ludicrous. The majority of the American people know the Mueller investigation was fake, know there was no collusion, and now can clearly see the anarchist demon rat party is going insane.
I do want to bring to everyone's attention the next boogeyman we're ready to take down is the Federal Reserve. And you have done extensive research in this, and we have a huge, big work to offer everyone, but it was just so big that it seemed to be important that we break it down into sections. So if you pay attention to the YouTubes, you're going to see 4 mini lessons on the history of banking. And then once we're finished with that and you have a deep understanding of the history, then we're going to be bringing it forward and showing you how this history ties into exactly what we're seeing today. And really, after I finished reading your amazing work, Douglas, I saw that number one, that there is a history to how we got to the central bank Federal Reserve. It doesn't start with Jekyll Island. There's a long history and it affects everyone in the world. Number two, things are never going to get better until we take down central bank's Federal Reserve. And the third point is how easy it's going to be once we educate and enlighten enough people as to what the history is and who the players are that are not on the scene. You may think they are, but they're not. We're going to just take care of that. That'll be next on our list. So to get started with the tweets today, had the Fed not mistakenly raised interest rates, especially since there is very little inflation, and had not done the ridiculously timed quantitative tightening, the 3.0 GDP and stock market would have both been much higher, and world markets would be in a much better place.
We have heard Trump say this so many times. Really, it is true that Powell is his enemy and the U.S. Fed is his enemy, because he'd have a 4.0 or higher had they not attacked him with these rate hikes. And so he keeps complaining about this, and so because the numbers have been dropped and they've actually been adjusted even below that in some reports, that's an attack. That's an attack by the Fed. Now, the Fed is supposed to be working for America. They're not. Here's the proof of it. And all it would have taken is for them to do slow adjustments. But no, they had to do 8 adjustments in the shortest period of time that they've ever happened in American history. Contradistinction to the free ride that Obama had. And basically, it doesn't really matter because, as Trump has said recently in his talks, the world economy is going into the toilet. Our economy is rising to its highest level in history. And it's only going to get better because no matter what happens with China, we're going to make money. No matter what happens with North Korea, we're going to make money. No matter what happens with Iran, same thing. No matter what happens with any of these deals, Mexico, Canada, we simply win. We end up on top of all of them. Why? Because it's a new frame of mind. It's a frame of mind that says we are standing up for Americans and putting Americans first instead of being gutted by the globalists. And that is exactly what was going on. And sorry, Jerome Powell is a globalist, and he's shown that, and it's too bad, because these people get put in these positions, and you think that they'd have some morality. But
well, they're not going to put a patriot on the board of the Federal Reserve. That's an oxymoron.
Well, he has the ability now to stack the committee that runs the Federal Reserve, and he's slowly doing it. But I don't think that he's going to fully do it until now that when the Mueller probe is over and completely calmed down, he's going to start attacking the Federal Reserve by placing 5 more members on the 12-member board, which will then give him the majority vote. And basically, there will be no more nonsense. And the Federal Reserve is not going to be paid like they usually are. Every few years, they demand to be paid billions of dollars, okay? They also fly under the false flag that they are American-owned. No, they're not. There's a part of them that the American public owns in that there are exchanges between the Treasury and the Federal Reserve for currency purposes and other such adjustments. But when it comes down to it, the 12 central banks and the U.S. Federal Reserve have gouged us horribly, taken their money and put it onto the stock market, and now they're trying to basically clear their books of stock from the stock market, both commodities and
But they want to
stock.
do it on the backs of Americans, and that's what we're not going to permit. And this is why it's so important that we get everyone up to speed on the history of banking and show you how this ties into what's going on with the Federal Reserve today, so we can take them down.
Absolutely. Trump just has to say to them, I'm sorry, who gave you permission as central banks to start being brokers on the stock market? You are bankers. Bankers and brokers should never be in the same room together. They should never speak to one another. Because why? That's insider trading. So you now have the biggest banks in the world, the American U.S. Federal Reserve central banks, the 12 of them, the federal banks, all investing as much as 1/3 of their assets in the stock market. Why? So they can then sell it quickly when it's at a high price. So in other words, they jacked up the stock market so they can sell their assets and get out and make more money.
Yep.
Because why? A few years ago, we said to them, we're not giving you, I forget what it was, the 14 billion, 15 billion you're asking for. Every 3 or 4 years, they ask for a huge amount of money. And it goes directly to the members, the stockholders of the Federal Reserve. And the U.S. government does not own the Federal Reserve. It's owned by shareholders. So how is it that the taxpayers own it? We don't own it. Bankers own it. And so many things can be done to take down the Federal Reserve. You could simply freeze their assets. You could simply take back our currency, stop them from being our currency exchange agents, on and on and on.
Well, that's why this series is involved, because it is involved. So let's go on to the next tweet. Robert Mueller was a hero to the radical left Democrats until he ruled that there was no collusion with Russia. So ridiculous to even say. After more than 2 years since the insurance policy statement was made by a dirty cop, I got the answers I wanted. The truth.
Now, there is something in between the lines here I want to point out. First off, he's talking about dirty cop Peter Strzok and his lover, who probably wasn't his lover, Lisa Page, who I guess Nellie Ohr knew when she was in college. And I guess Nellie Ohr, according to some people, is a CIA recruiting officer. And that's the reason that Lisa Page became an FBI lawyer. It seems as if the corruption with Mueller goes back in history, so that Mueller was raised in this type of corruption, exactly like Pelosi was raised by a mob boss, Hillary was raised by a mob boss. You're talking about people who were raised in criminality, and that's all they know. And so they were never taught any morality or love of a human being. They were taught simply to go after their own desires and the 7 deadly sins that drive all of them. So what are we talking about? Peter Strzok is the dirty cop. Trump keeps pointing out the insurance policy because the insurance policy became the Mueller investigation. People still haven't, though it's said over and over again, they still don't understand the power of what that meant. That meant during the election, the insurance policy, the counterintelligence attack of John Brennan, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, and the whole FBI counterintelligence department, Priestap, Baker, McCabe, Rybicki, all of them, they were all 100% complicit in attacking candidate Trump, Trump-elect President, and President Trump. And it became a coup d'etat. And so when he says that this is very strange, because he says that he got the answers he wanted, the truth. Well, what would that be? The truth is he read already the unredacted FISA reports. He has seen who really unmasked those hundreds of unmaskings that were in the White House, where Samantha Power said she did not unmask them. He knows the truth of the 4 applications. He knows that there were national security letters written. He knows all of this, but he can't say it. And this is the problem and why we are here all the time reading between the lines for him. He got the answers he wanted, which was not only the fact that Page and Strzok's messages, which were basically pared down from 55,000 to just a few hundred, and they were even hand-chosen by Peter Strzok because Michael Horowitz allowed him to hand-choose the non-incriminating messages. Well, in those messages, it clearly says they want to assassinate Trump, that they had 13 different names for this organization that was transforming.
Wait a minute, hold it. You saw that it has assassination attempt?
Agent 1 and 5.
Oh, Agent 1 and 5, yes, that's right.
They're going to carry their extra gun?
Well, that reminds me now, when you look at the text between Strzok and Page, I've always said that there's more there, and that my guess is that there is an assassination attempt in there. That's purely a speculative statement. But then you look at Peter's wife. His wife is Melissa Hodgman, and I don't know, she looks like she could be a pretty big match for little Lisa Page. But Melissa Hodgman is the Associate Director of the Securities and Exchange Commission. And so that is her husband, Peter Strzok. We need Patriots to start looking into Hodgman, because many say that she is the gatekeeper that has kept all these years from the Clinton Foundation being investigated.
Yes, that's true. And as you say before, Betsy, that they didn't have an affair. Strzok and Page didn't have an affair. That was what he used as an excuse to extract any of these messages they sent back and forth that had a personal tone to them, a personal message or a personal anything. Well, guess what? You can't have personal messages on FBI phones, okay? That's insane. CIA phones that are paid for by we the people? How do you get to say, no, it's all proprietary. Every single thing they do is proprietary on that phone.
Well, how come we don't see any text from Peter and his wife, Melissa, on these texts? I mean, if you're in a relationship and you're freely texting back and forth, don't you check in with your real wife to tell her when you're going to be home from dinner? I'm telling you, there was a lot more to these Strzok texts that we are not seeing.
Michael Horowitz's Department of Justice Inspector General investigation is doing what most of those do. That's the place where truth goes to die, is the Inspector General's office. And so he basically is just covering up all of this stuff. What Trump is talking about here is he got what he needed to know. No collusion, no conspiracy, no obstruction. Now they're continuing on with the nonsense of going to the Southern District of New York to go after Trump for Cohen's lies about his plea deal for the election fraud, which there was none. There was no money paid to the whore. And the whore, Daniels, was in fact Avenatti's whore and Cohen's whore. So when you look at this closely, you'll see that that was actually a conspiracy to try to, in fact, extort the president. This was Cohen trying to get a job in the White House. Remember, Cohen collected $2.1 million, tried to collect $4 million, saying that he was going to be in the White House by going to different companies and saying that he would represent them and get their interests into the White House. They're going to try to pin conspiracy on Cohen and conspiracy on Stone so that they can still say there was conspiracy somewhere. But there is nothing. Nothing touched Trump. Nothing. And now Trump is basically insinuating, and he's going to say it in the next one, he may just not even release the Mueller report. He doesn't have to. He didn't have to let Congress see the abbreviated report before he saw it. He didn't have to let Horowitz continue the investigation into FISA. He didn't have to let Sessions go on. He didn't have to let any of that happen, but he did because he's innocent and he wanted to let the swamp show who they are. He wanted these gators to get out of the water so that they can be shot and caught.
So you like those gator clips that I'm putting at the bottom of the cat reports?
I'm addicted to them. I must admit, I think they're much more exciting than anything going on in the Democratic Party in Washington, D.C.
Well, it is like the gator hunting. I mean, these, like, you take a big gator like Hillary. She's old, she's big, she hides in the deepest and the darkest places in the swamp. And then you get a team of swamp hunters out there or gator hunters out there to get her. Oh, it's very exciting. Okay, the next tweet is, the problem is, no matter what the radical left Democrats get, no matter what we give them, it will never be enough. Just watch. They will harass and complain and resist. That's the theme of their movement. So maybe we should just take our victory and say, no, we've got a country to run.
Eric Holder, contempt of Congress. He refused to turn over the documents still 7 years later refuses to turn over the documents for Fast and Furious. And those are the guns that have created the war on the southern border. Those are the guns given to Mexico. Those are the hand grenade launchers. That's all the equipment that the cartels are using to murder literally untold amounts of people and to keep this war on the southern border going and to bring the drugs in. That would be Eric Holder. Eric Holder might as well be an MS-13 gang member or a cartel leader, Mexican cartel leader, because he is that guilty. That's what the Democrats do when the Republicans ask them for documents. So what Trump is talking about here, first off, he always says this, and we need to remember this. Their attempt was to nullify the election. It was a regime change. It was a coup d'etat. They still, to this moment, wish to say the election results are not true. You see, that is what George Soros has done in 14 color revolutions in nations where he has swept in as a predatory...
Actually, I think it's number 6 on his list.
Yes, exactly. And so what we're talking about here is you need to remember that they want to simply say that Trump is not the president. That's how insane of an anarchist group they have become. That they literally think that they can overthrow a U.S. presidential election, which was very obviously and clearly slanted, but slanted against him. And he still won. So he said it again the other day. This is beautiful. He said, last time they cheated. They rigged the election.
And this time, they have no candidates that can beat Trump.
Trump said the other day that he's going to make sure that the election is not rigged this time, because it was rigged last time, and the only reason he won is because of the tremendous turnout, and he went on and on saying this, of the people who came from the valleys and the fields and from the mountains, and that it was a landslide. That's the only reason he won, because he knows it's rigged. He says this time it's not going to be rigged. And what I loved the most was he said the following. Well, you know, there are legal provisions to take care of this. We must have a paper backup system in all the states. This is the reason why they can take ballots after the vote is over. Harvesting ballots, they call it, because it's rigged. So what he's saying is, no. We need to have the paper backup.
Well, when did he say that?
He just said it 2 days ago.
Oh my, I missed that. That's pretty big because we've been hammering on this for quite a while.
It's huge. And we're going to make sure that Jim Jordan and other members of Congress remind the president and the whole world about Optech and that no digital voting machine is actually being honest in America.
It's not
one
secure.
Of them.
It's there to rig elections.
They're not secure. They're owned by politicians. They're owned by Lord Malloch-Brown. They're owned by unfit Mitt Romney. They're owned by all these political agents, basically, who can rig it with fractional voting, can rig it with simply changing the votes at the end, can rig it through 1,000 different ways. So Trump said, well, and this has been the issue, some states refuse to have a paper backup. He said that by law, we have to have a paper backup. So he was asked point blank about the 2020 election. Is it going to be rigged? And he said, no, we're going to stop it. And we're basically going to have paper ballot backups. Okay, that is amazing.
That's huge.
Yeah, because that's what we've been promoting that. And now it looks like it's an idea that's in his head if he can pull it off. But let's go on with this. When he uses the word harass and complain, that is illegal, harassing the president. Complaining, you complain all you want. But when you resist, and that's the next word he uses, and he says that's the theme of their movement, really, it's only anti-Trump. The only thing the anarchist Democrats have is anti-Trump. So what do they want? They want to resist lawfulness. They want to resist the rule of law, because during the Obama and Hillary time, there was complete unlawfulness. Do whatever you want, it doesn't matter. Look at Joe Biden, good old molester Joe. Molested everybody while he's being filmed. What's he doing when he's not being filmed? This is the type of lawlessness that ruled the Washington District of Crime during the Obama 8 years. So now what do we have? We have a resistance group, and that resistance group is centered in the Senior Executive Service, 10,000 members, 8,500 of them appointed by Obama, who are basically run probably by the very people who ran the White House and moved the U.S. digital system into Obama's house in Washington, D.C., where Valerie Jarrett is working, along with Eric Holder, to this very day, both of whom are criminals. Valerie Jarrett being, of course, a mob criminal in Chicago, well known, and Eric Holder being the criminal I just described. So what do they have? Really, when it comes down to it, when he says, just take our victory and say no, we've got a country to run, what he's talking about is the following. First, let me go back. First off, when it says there will never be enough, anything Pelosi has said since she came to power has been a lie. There is not one word out of her mouth that I have heard that has not been a bold-faced, very clearly crafted, anarchist lie. So whatever she says, realize it's a lie. But what he's saying here is take our victory. He has won, and it doesn't matter when Barr's report comes out. It doesn't matter how much he releases. When Trump releases the unredacted FISA applications, it's all going to go downhill, and the Brits are going to be called out, the Ukrainians are going to be called out, and all of the weaponized intelligence departments of the U.S. federal government are going to be called out. So what he's saying here is he might just say, nah, I'm not going to release the Mueller report. No, I'm not going to give old Nadler the documents that he wants, and I'm going to tell people, if he subpoenas you to come to the House Judiciary Committee, Jerry Nadler, just say no. And many people are. As a matter of fact, a huge amount of them are saying no. When they ask for millions of pages of documents, just say no. Do what Eric Holder did. Just say no. When they hold you in contempt of Congress, just say no.
And when you do get to Congress, you can lie because it's legal to lie in Congress.
And when the Southern District of New York demands further investigations, do not cooperate. No one. No need to cooperate with these people. They conducted the conspiracy that was the smear campaign. We know who they are, and we don't need to listen to them anymore.
So funny that the New York Times and the Washington Post got a Pulitzer Prize for their coverage. 100% negative and fake of collusion with Russia. And there was no collusion. So they were either duped or corrupt. In any event, their prizes should be taken away by the committee.
Okay, New York Times, that's Carlos Slim. He's a Mexican, and he's evil, and he gave to the Clinton Foundation as part of Uranium One. He's in on the Uranium One deal. You can't get any more corrupt than Carlos Slim in the New York Times, who institutionalized leaking through Comey and his buddy there, who he called his lawyer, who wasn't his lawyer. So the New York Times has committed more crimes you can shake a stick at, and they were, of course, involved in the dossier up to their eyeballs. The Washington Post, the Bezos Washington Post, is nothing more than a propaganda rag. Same thing with the New York Times now. Remember, Washington Post puts out articles by radical Islamic terrorists. They put out articles by Mitt Romney bashing the president. First thing Mitt Romney did. They put out articles from Khashoggi. Khashoggi was Khashoggi was complicit with 9/11. Okay, you can't get any worse than the Washington Post, and they got a Pulitzer Prize, but that's okay. Let me explain what the Pulitzer Prize is. Joseph Pulitzer, after watching William Randolph Hearst control the country with his newspaper network and his and all of that, he went to war with him to try to outdo him in New York. And so Joseph Pulitzer started putting raw sex, horrible sex jokes, pornography, lies, and grotesque entertainment, and comics, and just disgusting stuff. And so he started to get more people subscribing to his newspaper than William Randolph Hearst. So Hearst started in a competition with him. So they challenged each other to a competition to say who could affect people more with just their newspaper. And William Randolph Hearst won because he created the Spanish-American War, though it never happened. He created a false flag, which he put on the front page of his newspaper. Remember the Maine. In other words, just like the Lithuania, just like the Bay of Tonkin. A false flag created by a newspaper that then created what is now called yellow journalism, all lies. And he promoted this war, and people, it's even in the history books. William Randolph Hearst invented, propagandized, and made it history, though it never happened. And because of that, he won the battle with Joseph Pulitzer, who was doing the same at the same time to try to get tried to win the bet on who could have more subscribers by the end of the period that they had set out. So, in the end, Joseph Pulitzer gave his money from his yellow journalism, and literally he used yellow ink, and that was one of the reasons it's called yellow journalism, and he put out grotesque cartoons and sexual nonsense, and just, you can't believe the garbage that he printed. If you want to see real garbage, the basis of what we have now is fake news, that's Joseph Pulitzer. Now, he gave enough money to Columbia University to give out the Pulitzer Prize to people who do great newspaper or
well, wait a minute. If they're giving out prizes for these people to write this totally fake article, excuse me, then that casts a shadow on anyone who's ever won a Pulitzer, because now I have to wonder, are all these other Pulitzer Prize winners fakes like the ones here? I mean, Pulitzer, wow, I don't know what to make of this.
Didn't Alvy Watkins get put up for a Pulitzer for being a prostitute? For all she did was sex with Wolfe. What's his first name?
James Wolfe.
James Wolfe. And James Wolfe went to jail for 2 months.
So didn't the Watergate people get a Pulitzer? I mean, what they're doing is they're awarding their own people these prizes, sort of like what Senior Executive Service does with its bonuses. So they give you a prize that everybody thinks is a good thing. You get some cash with it, and they pat you on the back for being a good globalist puppet. So I say from this point on, winning a Pulitzer means nothing. It means you're a dirtbag that works with other dirtbags.
That is correct. And the award comes from Columbia University,
which is a globalist university.
The worst.
Worst.
It was called King George College at first, and that's where Obama went, and that's where these radicals who tried to blow up colleges in the 60s, that's where they went. Columbia University is a cesspool of left fascism.
You know, this is like those people that go out and buy trophies for themselves at a trophy store and put it in their office. Have you seen this?
Yeah. Now, also, remember, Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, another fake organization.
For the guy who invented dynamite, which has caused more deaths than anyone can calculate, gives out a peace prize. First off, that's an oxymoron. Second off, Obama bombed more people than any president in history. He bombed, I don't even want to give you the statistics, 26,000 bombs he dropped. Okay, there was hardly a day of his administration, well, there was not a day of his administration, he wasn't at war with as many as 7 different countries without the Congress giving any approval for war or any appropriations for war. By the way, Mr. Rand Paul, you want to talk about appropriations? Obama didn't have appropriations for bombing those countries. Okay, now, he got the Nobel Peace Prize when he was Barack Obama, who was literally the worst violent president we have had in history. Those countries didn't attack us.
But then you question the whole Nobel Peace Prize stuff. Once again, it's a bunch of globalists deciding which of their globalist puppets is going to be recognized. So then I question every single Nobel Peace Prize winner ever.
Oh yeah, there's a story of one of the Nobel Peace Prize. There's a what is he? He's a royalty in the country that gives it out, and he's sitting there talking to Higgs, the guy who supposedly found the God particle, the Higgs boson particle, right? And he's talking to him, and after a while he says, let me see if I got what you're saying is right. You didn't find anything.
Yeah, I remember this.
There's nothing that can be applied anywhere.
Yeah.
The statistics have now been questioned by NASA and everybody else, and you yourself say you really didn't find anything. Give me back that Nobel Peace Prize. He literally takes it out of his hand and takes it back. Why? Because it's fake.
Okay. In honor of his past service to our country, Navy SEAL Eddie Gallagher will soon be moved to less restrictive confinement while he awaits his day in court. Process should move quickly.
That's a good president looking after his soldiers beneath him, but we don't know the way this is going to go. He may not be found, this soldier, innocent, but they had him in a very terrible jail. And so because he's a decorated soldier, highly decorated, all Trump said was give him a decent jail to be in. And it's very possible that he may be found guilty. So don't think for 1 minute that this means that Trump is going to support his innocence or give him some kind of pardon. I don't think he'll do that. He was just
He's just giving him the benefit of the doubt is what he's doing.
Well, just treating him like the war hero that he is, because this guy went crazy and he killed some people, supposedly. But maybe he went crazy because of all of the vaccines we give, the poisonous vaccines we give to our soldiers, or because of the poppers that they have to work in these, basically, they're the same thing as 5G. Our military work in a 5G atmosphere because they use the 5G to attack our enemies. It's basically electronic warfare. And so who's to say that this man isn't damaged from that? But we'll see what happens. This was just a humanitarian thing that shows that Trump is probably the most sensitive and caring and loving president that I know of in American history.
It would be so easy to fix our weak and very stupid Democrat-inspired immigration laws in less than 1 hour and then a vote. The problem would be solved. But the Dems don't care about the crime. They don't want any victory for Trump and the Republicans, even if it's good for USA.
And we know this. We're just going to summarize this, and that's basically that the Dems don't care about the crime, so they're complicit with it. They are, in fact, criminals. And as I said before, all the fentanyl deaths and opiate deaths, those are on the shoulders of the Democrats. They are absolutely criminals because they say there's no crisis on the southern border. There couldn't be any bigger crisis. We have as many as 5 million Central Americans who have been weaponized, given money by communists, by the way, China and Russia, and they are being sent towards us as an invasion just like Europe. So what we really need to say is that the Dems don't care about crime. That's for sure. They don't care about a secure border. They don't want a wall. They don't want ICE. They want to abolish ICE. They want to abolish taking the illegal aliens who are committing crimes on a fantastic level, and they want to get rid of the people who actually handle them and send them back to where they belong. But they come right back because there's no border. Remember, the Dems are the sanctuary city people. In other words, they're breaking the law. They are basically members of MS-13. They're members of these gangs. They're members of these communist groups sending these people into America. So what we need to do is very simple. We need to have right laws. The Democrats have not put forth a sensible immigration bill in a long, long time. They had one going that Schumer wrote, which was basically the same thing Trump wants, and the Democrats had a president and the Senate and the House, and they couldn't get it through because they don't want it through. So there will be no sensible bills from the Democrats. And with Paul Ryan, we saw 2 insane, non-sensible bills from the Republicans when he was in the House. I don't think we're going to ever see a sensible immigration bill. And what we need to do is have no DACA. We need to have a bill that says no DACA, no amnesty, no lottery, no catch and release, follow through on visa overstays, build a border, strengthen ICE, put our military on the border until it is secure, and no sanctuary cities, no sanctuary states, and lock up the politicians and the law enforcement, which they're not, agents who are not following through on what the law says. There's no such thing as a sanctuary city. That is nothing more than criminal activity. Now, what we also want to say is that there are further caravans on the way here. How many caravans have to be seen, supported by the Mexican government, before we declare war with Mexico? Now, we have told you that the corrupt California politicians, Maxine Waters, Feinstein, Pelosi,
Don't forget Adam Schiff. And Gavin Newsom.
These are criminals. And we tell you right now, point blank, we have seen them go to Mexico when they shouldn't be going to Mexico for no reason, and they don't even state that they went there for a reason. And I'll tell you the reason. They were receiving cash payments. The California politicians receive cash payments from Mexico to keep the borders open so they can keep the human trafficking, organ trafficking, sex trafficking, the drugs, and everything else that drives California a big business there, because that is who rules California. So Gavin Newsom, when Trump just announced that he's no longer going to give money to El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Honduras, guess what? Gavin Newsom immediately got on a plane and went to El Salvador to be with the people that he supports, our enemies, to probably receive another cash payment before they are cash strapped because Trump isn't going to give them any more money.
Don't forget, Gavin is Nancy Pelosi's nephew.
California has 4 families that run it. Jerry Brown and his dad, and then now you have Newsom and you have Pelosi. And remember, Pelosi is the daughter of a mob boss. And so, what do you expect? You should expect her to be a mob boss, and that's what she is.
Well, the next tweet continues this. Mexico must use its very strong immigration laws to stop the many thousands of people trying to get into the USA. Our detention areas are maxed out and we will take no more illegals. Next step is to close the border. This will also help us with stopping the drug flow from Mexico. Kind of goes into what you were saying.
The battle is on. Thank you, Mr. Trump. You are declaring war economically against Mexico, and it's always better to do it economically. No need for guns. So you close that border. You closed the border last time. The Mexicans lost $1.5 billion in a matter of a few days. People don't want to acknowledge this. We make money. If their cars don't come across the border, they go back and somebody buys an American car. This is all good. This is better than the New Deal that he has. This is better than just going back to pre-NAFTA. This is turning Mexico into exactly what it is, our enemy. We are at war with Mexico. They are at war with us. They're at war with us, and we have done nothing much about it until Trump came along. And we need to realize that if you simply close the border, what happened? They tightened up Tijuana. They kept the caravan there. Nobody went over the wall when he did this before and he closed the border. And Tijuana became the most dangerous city in the world. More deaths in Tijuana, and that's just the ones we know of, than anywhere else in the world. Now, you have to ask the question, the drugs coming into Mexico, everyone knows that this is in the newspaper that they report it, okay? That the opium coming out of Afghanistan has to be allowed to continue until Trump came, and then he started burning the fields and blowing up the opium labs. But the CIA went right back in and started it again against Trump, okay? So that shows you that the intelligence agencies informing Trump are big fat friggin' liars. The opium is flowing out of Afghanistan again. It goes to the CIA. The CIA brings it over the southern border. Everybody knows this.
We need to close the CIA. I mean, we could talk about that, but the only reason that we supposedly have it is to protect us from our enemy, but they are the enemy. I mean, they're the ones that worked with the Brits to spy and try to take down Trump. Gina Haspel was in the London office when all this was going down. Then she becomes the director of the CIA. You tell me, has she given a report to the president? Has she told him about Allison Saunders, our vendor standby, and her relationship to Bob Mueller? Has Gina Haspel told the president how the Queen's Privy Council worked directly to overthrow him? Tell me, Gina, have you been doing your job?
No, and that's why Trump went first to the CIA and said, no columns, no more columns. Get rid of these columns. And the CIA, you haven't heard one single peep out of the CIA for 2 years now, have you?
No, you haven't.
That's because he put the person in charge that he knew was 100% guilty. This is what he does. And then whatever they do reveals who they are.
Yes.
And so her non-action during the time that the Brits attacked us in the worst espionage attack on our Constitution since 1812 and the American Revolution, and other times they intervened. But this is a horrible, horrible, horrible attack on us, and nothing is being done by the CIA? Why isn't the CIA down in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras stopping the invaders? Why aren't they on the southern border of Mexico?
They're probably down there passing out guns along with Eric Holder.
That's the problem.
Let's read this last tweet. The Trump administration has succeeded in dramatically raising the cost to Iran for its sinister behavior at no cost to the U.S. or our allies. That's the definition of a foreign policy achievement. This is a quote from Bret Stephens, New York Times. And then it looks like Trump adds, we are getting stronger all over the world. Watch.
Now, there is so much in this statement. First off, that Trump posted it. Okay. Second off, we are getting stronger all over the world. Watch. Now, I'm not sure who that came from. Is that still part of Bret Stephens? It doesn't matter. That's what Trump says all the time, and it is true. What's going on in Iran is very simple. The French and the British were getting ready to sneak a pipeline out of Iran. It's now a dead project. They're so upset that the Germans are breaking the sanctions and getting the EU to do a workaround to send $400 million to Iran to continue the payments. Why does the European Union need to continue payments to Iran? What do they owe? What is Iran doing for the European Union? That was supposed to be the pipeline. It was building the pipeline, right? Now, the European Union is so stupid that they don't know that Russia and China have already come in and done oil deals. And this is a fact. You just have to read it from, foreign newspapers, or news agencies. But what happened is, when they did this, it was the deal as follows. Iran said, you can take what the British and the French have in these two gigantic oil fields of theirs, and what we want are your weapons, your missiles. And so they bought a huge amount of missiles from Russia and China. They're using them, and they all got blown up so far by Israel, except the 30 that were launched, and those were blown out of the air. So basically, the China and Russia got an oil deal in Iran. And this caused China and Russia to make a good deal in selling weapons and getting oil, and it basically undercut the lies of the European Union. And that's the reason the European Union, in absolute contradistinction, as our enemy, is breaking the sanctions with Iran. If they're going to continue giving them $400 million every time they turn around, Iran is not going to stop providing money for missiles and buying missiles from Russia and China and giving them to Syria and it's basically the Iranian Revolutionary Guard all the way through Iraq to Syria to Lebanon and then into Palestine. Not quite yet, but certainly on the southern border of Syria. That's why the Golden Heights is the big issue, because these missiles, if they get that close to Golden Heights, Israel's done in. Okay? So Israel is already in full-scale war with Iran, whether people want to acknowledge it or not. So that's what's going on. The Iranian sanctions are because $150 billion was given by Obama to Iran to basically take out Israel. Because remember, Obama is a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. He always has been. He dons their garb for ceremonies. Don't get me started. He's always been a Muslim.
Okay, is that a wrap then?
No, that's not a wrap. So what we need to remember is that Germany is our enemy here. And that all around the world, things are going to be fine because the lies are coming out. They cannot any longer stand on the lies if they do not have a president who wants to be complicit with those lies. So yes, all around the world, people are saying in different nations that they support Trump. The common people support Trump. Many of the rulers hate Trump because why? Angela Merkel is George Soros' political daughter who is doing in the European Union so that she can get her multi-billion-dollar place in Paraguay. All you have to do is follow the money of these people. So what Trump has posted here is true. He is getting stronger all around the world. And with the Iran deal, we don't even see what's really going on there. But what is going on is we are supporting Israel, and Israel is in full-scale war with Iran at this moment.